El mundo está preocupado en estos momentos por la inflación, pero un autor canadiense, Jeff Booth, nos dice que la deflación, esto es la baja de los precios producto de la tecnología, puede ser la clave de la prosperidad en el futuro. Esto lo ha señalado Jeff Booth, quien es empresario y escritor canadiense. Fue líder de BuildDirect, una compañía de tecnología que buscaba ayudar en la industria de la construcción, y en enero del 2020 presentó su libro The Price of Tomorrow, Why Deflation is Key to an Abundant Future, el precio del mañana, por qué la deflación es la llave para un futuro de abundancia. Vamos a hacer esta conversación en inglés. Jeff, thank you very much. I know you're in Zihuatanejo. I'm in Mexico City, and I know you're in the midst of your vacation, so thank you very much for speaking with us. Everyone's worried about inflation. And you tell us that deflation is the key to the future. Why?
Yeah, it's a hard concept, and it's a hard concept because we're dealing with two systems that are colliding into each other. One driven by the free market and technology, which brings more for less or deflation. In fact, why we use technology, why we're able to do this Zoom call right now that can touch many more people, is because technology allows that. And we use things that free our time and allow prices to fall. But we're trapped in a system that is built on debt, and that debt requires inflation to be able to remain viable. So what's happening is you have central banks around the world pushing harder and harder to drive inflation because it's actually the only way to pay back a debt in a system that is essentially a man-made system competing against the free market that's trying to drive prices down.
Now, technology is changing the rules of the game. The cell phone that I have is, 100, 1,000 times more powerful than computers in the 1950s or 1960s. But is that taken into account in the inflation indices?
No, and they try to, but it's these numbers are essentially what's happening is the productivity gains that are being driven by technology that we're using are being masked by a system trying to drive inflation to remain viable. And so the answer is quite simply no. And that's actually why this is such a hard concept to understand, because all of our measurement is through an existing system. We measure a system from a system. And so we see things like telephones getting cheaper, or a cell phone, which is not just a telephone anymore, but it's a communication device that has all these free apps on it, and it drives tons of abundance in your life. And it drops in price, and it keeps falling in price as you get more for less. But it's competing against a system that's pushing prices up. So even the gains that you've had in your technology and in your cell phone, you think, okay, well, that can go down, but my house can go up. And so what's happening is the inflation that's being pushed, it's being pushed into things we need the most: energy prices, food prices, house prices, and technology is still moving faster and faster and faster. And there's less overall market to be able to put, because technology it's a base layer, it's moving into everything. And so as you're printing money into that, you're dividing society as a byproduct.
How can, well, first let me focus on inflation. You've told us that inflation is actually a scheme by central bankers to actually erase or dilute the price of servicing a debt or of paying back the debt. Do they do this on purpose?
Yeah, and I want to be careful about it because people get really divided in this. It's a system problem, and they do it on purpose because the debt can't be repaid. Now, the consequence of that is there's a lot of people that believe that 2% inflation is required for a productive society. It is simply not true. It's required to be able to pay back debt that you can't pay back. And then when that debt gets even bigger and you can't pay it back through economic growth, you must pay it back by increasing the inflation rate. But inflation is wage deflation. So when people are saying, I'm going to get free money, I'm going to get more money, the best way to look at it is playing a game of Monopoly. If you went around the board game in Monopoly And then the central banks and people at the bottom of that board couldn't get around the game board anymore by passing go and getting $200. And the central bank said, okay, we'll give them $300. But all the prices went up, so they couldn't get around the game board. That's what you're seeing today, driving inflation. So so central banks have to keep on printing money to pay back debt, but the divide of society comes from the exact same thing, because inflation is wage deflation. It means your real wages are going down in terms. So the rich get richer, poor get poorer, and you end up centralizing all control to be able to continue playing that game. But Sergio, it's a structural problem because the debt cannot be repaid, and so that's what's happening today.
Jeff, if inflation actually makes the poor poorer and the rich richer, why do progressives are always pushing for policies that are going to give us more inflation, more spending, more debt?
Because it also empowers them in that because they can appeal to their base, and most people don't understand what I just said. Most people think they'll look at the short-term effects and they'll vote for somebody who says, I'll give you more money, without a realization that money comes from picking their pockets and making them poorer. But it's easy to fall into that trap, and people that don't have any money, that are kind of the bottom of the social economic ladder, they don't have time to investigate what we're talking about at a first principles basis. So it's easier to believe in a politician that says, I'm going to give you free money.
How can deflation allow us to build a more abundant future?
So I think, and again, remember two different systems. One requires debt and inflation to grow and grow forever, and another system that probably the best way to look at it is, what is money and what is money? And it's just an abstract concept for our time. We trade our time for money, and we expect to be, and we think we want more money, but we actually want more of the feeling of what money will buy us: more vacation time, more safety, more security, more friends time. So we don't want more money. It's just an information exchange for our time. So we want more time. So when on one system where technology is essentially, and then add this, where what technology does is it frees our time. It allows our time. We use technology because it gives us more time. So you have a system that is designed around technology, our work, which saves labor and reduces and gives us more as a result. And you have a system competing against that time by distorting money. You distort our time. So deflation is the natural consequence of a free market and technology. And what's happening is most of the deflation is in front of us. As we move into artificial intelligence and artificial general intelligence and robotics, more and more of our time is enhanced as prices fall. In fact, the only way to set a system that allows the abundance gained from technology to be most broadly distributed is through a system that cannot manipulate money to steal our time.
It's peculiar that you say that. In the past two financial crises, we had one in 2008, but we also had one in 2020 with the pandemic. The solution was to spend more government money to increase debt. What do you think of those solutions to the financial crises that we've had?
Well, what's happening, and I think you're seeing it all around the world today, and maybe this is a better way of looking at it. If money is just information about an exchange of our time, and if people can distort money to be able to steal our time, money is just trust. And so all over the world, economies break down, societal chaos moves into society if we don't have trust in money, because it's just trust. And so if somebody can distort, kind of blow up a balloon, create more money out of thin air, eventually the balloon pops. Often the balloon doesn't pop in the way that people think it pops. Though the balloon pops because people lose trust in each other, and politicians fight on both sides of the aisle. Nations fight over trust and money when it's just an information exchange. So what you're seeing in society, which will unfortunately predictably get worse and worse, is a result of a loss of trust, which is it's just information and money. So when you have misinformation and money as a byproduct, and you must have misinformation everywhere in society.
If we can't trust traditional money, what should we do? Should we buy gold? Should we buy cryptocurrency? What should we do if we want to save our money?
So my personal, I've done a lot of, you can imagine, I've done a lot of work on this, both from the existing system and a transition to a new system. And the only thing I've seen that allows us to move to a system that is, that it can be trusted and allows the technology or technological progress to be most distributed is Bitcoin. And I specifically say not other cryptocurrencies there, not to say that people couldn't make money short term on them, but I suspect what's going to happen is all of Web3 is going to be built on top of Bitcoin. And why is because it's a system that can't be gamed by human beings. And it can't be, and so it removes the ability for human beings to change the rules. Gold for a long time worked under a similar system, but because gold had to be centrally stored, you had to build a credit-based system on top of gold for velocity and money. And what that allowed over time, as you got to the long-term debt cycle like we would be in now, is that gold would be confiscated. People would change the rules and say, typically after a war, and say, we promise not to do it again. And then, but throughout human history, if a money could be changed, if you could change rules on money to help some people at the expense of other people, history says that will happen. And so gold has typically been that, but it's been over time seized and changed, and Bitcoin can't be corrupted.
Creativity has been the key to success, to advancements in humanity for centuries, for millennia, maybe. What can we do to maintain a creative society? How can we keep on inventing things that will make our lives better?
I love that you said that. I love that you said that. And actually, that's a polar opposite. So essentially, creativity. The ideas that we never saw before they were there comes from the free market. It doesn't typically come from centralized planning. And so all of societies, all of human evolution stands on top of that creativity, which comes from us. And we only use the things that give us the most value. So that's a paradox. And it's not really a paradox if you have a system aligned for it. But a system aligned on an incentive structure that allows the free market to work means we all win as society because prices keep falling and our time goes up. It actually allows the most creativity. But the key part about that that I think often people miss is the same reason Kodak missed the digital camera, even though they invented the digital camera. The status quo never sees the innovation as a benefit to society. They say that could hurt my business. And so what's happening today with Bitcoin is that type of change is happening at a monetary level, at the highest level. So it's a transition, but that transition, what it opens up is all of the innovation on top of it opens up essentially all of our ideas to work to save our time.
Jeff Booth, thank you very much for taking the time in your vacation to speak with us.
Thanks very much, Sergio.
Y a usted, amigo televidente, que hace posible este programa, se lo agradezco también. Esto es todo por hoy, pero no se lo olvide. Nos vemos la próxima.